Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video I thought I'd show you guys, just give you guys a quick overview of how I created the character control system for my game, Shadow of the Orient, which you can see here on the screen. So basically the character control system is using a state machine setup. It's a fairly advanced setup, but I actually learned how to create it, I actually learned how to develop this system based on a course offered by Sunny Valley Studio. The course is called Make a 2D Platformer Using Design Patterns, and the course does an excellent job in teaching you how to set up a state machine and kind of how to configure it and how to create separate states. So you know, if your character is moving or jumping or attacking, everything is running within its own isolated state, and it prevents any code conflicts from occurring. So if you're interested in learning how this works, I highly recommend taking this course. I'm just gonna say that I am not an affiliate for Sunny Valley Studio, nor am I affiliated with them in any way whatsoever. This is just a course that I took personally, and I found it to be very helpful. And if you guys are learning how to create character control systems on a more advanced level for 2D games, I highly recommend this course. And I'm sure a lot of the principles that you're going to learn in this course can also be applied to 3D games. I'm pretty sure you can take a lot of the lessons learned here and apply it to a 3D game as well. So I'm just going to quickly jump into Unity. I'm going to show you guys quickly my character for my game. I'm going to make my screen a bit smaller. Alright, get my ugly mug out of the way there. Okay, so you'll notice here, I'm in Unity, I have my hierarchy open, and I have my player character selected. So currently you don't see him in the scene view because I have the sprite renderer turned off, but I'm going to turn that back on. I'm going to turn off the gizmos real quickly. So here's my character, right? And if you look at the hierarchy here, there's my main game object, or my parent game object, and then I have a bunch of child game objects. The only ones that we're going to be concerned with is the agent script and the state script. Alright, so those are the two game objects I'm going to be quickly taking you through and kind of explaining how those work. But let me just quickly play the game so I can demonstrate the character control system in action, and you guys can see how it's working. So you'll see here I'm currently controlling the character through my keyboard. So so my agent is currently taking in all the input, kind of just seeing what needs to happen. So currently, if I don't press anything, he's in the idle state. And you'll notice here on my agent script that the current state is set to idle state. So if you look here under the inspector, right, under agent state tracking, my current state is idle state. And it also shows what the previous state was, which was the movement state. So if I crouch, you'll see that I'm currently in the crouch movement state, and then I go to the crouch idle state, and then if I release the crouch button, he goes back into the idle state, right? So my agent script is responsible for keeping track of the states, and it essentially kickstarts the state machine, right? And I'll show you that in a second. So again, all the actions that you see here on the screen, the running, the jumping, the attacks, the crouch attack, these are all occurring within individual states, right? So all the states are completely isolated. There's no possibility for conflicts to occur when you're using a state machine setup. So prior to me using going with the whole state machine setup, I had all of my code structured within one class. I probably had like 3,000 or 4,000 lines of code. It was completely unmanageable, and it was just the wrong way to do a character control system, right? There are people on YouTube and even Udemy that show you how to create a character control system the wrong way, and then there's creating it the right way. The way that Peter does it at Sunny Valley Studio, in my opinion, I think is the right way, right? And I think it's the way that everybody should be building their character control systems. Okay. Okay, so let me stop this here real quick. Okay, let me turn my gizmos back on because I just want to show you guys something here real quick in the scene view. So you're going to notice here that there are a bunch of colliders on my character. I'm not going to explain what those colliders are or what they all do, but some of them are used for ground collision. Some of them are used for wall collisions. Some of them are used for ceiling collisions. Well, there's one used for ceiling collision. The wall collisions, there's two occurring for wall collisions. I have another one that's being used for a climb collision. So I know when my character has the ability to climb up and down ladders, or other areas within the game like rock climbing, which I have in my game. Yeah, so there's a lot of different colliders here, but I'm not really going to cover any of these colliders. So just in case you guys are wondering about all of these different colliders, yeah, there is. I mean, this is a pretty complex setup. There are a lot of different colliders. Each of these colliders are kind of handling different. They're triggering different states, right? Depending on their collision states. Actually, I suppose I could just give you a quick overview. So if you notice here in my collider detectors game object, I have a whole bunch of different components. Each of these components are checking for different collisions. So for example, my ground detector, I have a climb detector, a ceiling detector, side detectors, which are used for wall sliding and wall jumping. I have a slope detector. Then I have a body detector, which I believe this is checking for water collisions. And then I have a stomp detector if I want to stomp on enemies. I have a jump pad detector, a dash collision detector, and a water detector. So actually I have two water detectors. Yeah, so anyways, I have a whole bunch of different components here that are checking for different collisions. And based on based on whether these collisions are true or false, they trigger different states, right, within the state machine. Now that that's kind of out of the way, let me jump back to the agent script here. So my agent script, if I go into that real quickly, my agent script is responsible for loading up State Factory, right? So it's going to load the State Factory, and then it's going to initialize all of the states that are within the State Factory. So let me jump back to Unity here for a second. I'm going to click on my states game object. So here you're going to notice in the inspector that I have a whole bunch of different state components, right? My idle state, movement state, auto run state, jump state, double jump state, fall state, climb state, so on and so forth, right? I think that's pretty self-explanatory of what's going on here. So each of these states are the purpose of each of these states is to control that particular state, all the logic for that particular state. And then I have my State Factory script here, which essentially loads all of these state components, and then my State Factory becomes a point of reference of where I can get my different states from, right? So if I need to transition from my idle state to my move state, I'm actually going to make that call to the State Factory, and I'm going to tell it that I need to get the movement state, right? So, so if I go back into my State Factory script here, which I don't think I've shown you guys yet, I'll give you guys a quick overview of what's happening. So I have an enum here called state type, where I define all of my different states. And this is essentially the enum that I use to specify which state I require from the State Factory. And I'll show you guys that in a second. And then here's my actual State Factory class. Again, here I create a serialized field where I define all of my states. So all of these states pretty much match up with the states that are defined in my enum. And then I have a public method called getState. So this is the state that I use within my actual states to transition to other states. Right, so when I call that getState method, I'm passing in a state type that I require, right? So this state type is the state type enum that we defined up here, right? And then we have an initialize method, and this is the method that gets called from the agent, which initializes the State Factory. So it's going to initialize all of the states that are loaded within the State Factory, and it's going to pass in a reference of the agent, right? So again, if I go back to my agent script here, you'll see here that I'm calling State Factory, initialize states this. So I'm passing in a reference of the agent script back into each state that I have saved or defined within the State Factory. And the reason why we're passing in a reference of the agent is because each state is going to require a reference to the agent, because we need to check for specific actions or specific variables that relate to the agent, right? So for example, here I have my idle state script open, and you'll notice here that if I scroll down a bit, just under my state update, so you'll see here in my state update, so my state update is running every frame. It's kind of like just like You can think of it as just like a regular Unity update method. So in my state update method here, I'm checking to see if there's any input occurring on the movement vector. So basically, if agent input data. Okay, so here's an example of why we need a reference to the agent class, because we need to get access to the input data, right? So the input data is the input that's being inputted into the system by the end user or by the player, right? So you know, the user input being the keyboard or the controller or a gamepad, right? So here we're checking to see if the agent input data has any movement on the x vector, right? So if agent input data, that movement vector that x is greater than 0, we are going to transition to our move state, right? So you'll see here that I'm calling agent transition to state move state, right? So our agent is also responsible for handling the transitions to different states, right? So here I'm calling agent transition to state. So this method is defined in my agent class. So where is it? Here. So transition to state, right? We're going to pass in the desired state that we want. And then this is where our states get swapped out, right? And then here we call display state, right? State name equals current state to get type that to string. So yeah, so I'm not going to explain all of this in too much detail because Peter from Sunny Valley Studio, he does all this line by line. But essentially, our agent script is responsible for kickstarting the state factory, and it's also responsible for switching out states, right? And then I'll give you guys a quick overview here of the actual state class, which is the parent class for each of our states that we create. So for example, my idle state, it actually inherits from our state class. So the state class is pretty much responsible for just kind of setting up the initial state or the initial configuration of the state. And then you can define some initial logic in here. This could be logic that we could use in our child classes as well, or we can override these methods and not use any of this logic at all. It depends on your particular use case. But you'll notice here within the state class, you know, we have our enter states, we have our exit state, we have our enter methods, our exit methods, which are used for entering a state and exiting a state. And that ensures that two states are never conflicting with each other, right? And then here we also have our handle jump press logic, change state animation, fall through platform on swipe. There's a whole bunch of different logic here that I'm using for my particular use cases. Some of this logic probably won't be covered in that course, in that 2D platformer course. Right, there is some logic here that I had to define for my particular game. So we have test jump transition, we have handle dash, which is a particular use case for my game. We have handle attack, test attack transition, so on and so forth, right? So, I mean, I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I just wanted to give you guys this brief overview of, to give you guys a better idea of how you can create a character control system using a state machine, right? So this is a much more advanced level of coding a character control system. And in my opinion, it works great. I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever. When I first started learning about how to structure all this, it was a little bit confusing to me at first. So some of the videos I had to go back and kind of rewatch in order to kind of grasp the actual logic. But eventually I was able to figure it all out. I got it all working exactly the way I wanted it to. It probably took me about, 2 months to get my character control system to work just the way I needed it to work. And it was definitely one of the most complex parts, one of the most complex, complex parts, is that right? I don't know, one of the most complex areas of game development, right? Creating that character control system and getting it to feel right and respond correctly and ensure that there's no conflicts occurring when you need to create or when you need to, trigger one action versus another, or when you need to transition from one action into another, right? So the state machine setup will definitely prevent those conflicts from occurring, right? So guys, anyways, that was just a quick overview of how to structure a character control system using a state machine setup. And again, if you're interested in going, taking a deeper dive into this and seeing how it's all being, coded, I highly recommend this course. I don't want to create, like a 5-hour lecture here based on how this is structured, because Peter already put in all the effort of showing you guys how to create this, and I don't want to undermine his efforts. So again, if you guys are really interested in taking a deeper dive into how this all works, line by line, on a code by code, a line by line code basis, I highly recommend this particular course here, Make a 2D Platformer Using Design Patterns. It's an excellent course, highly recommend it. So guys, I hope you guys found this video useful, and if you did, like and subscribe, I would appreciate it, and I'll have another video out for you guys soon. So take care, see you guys next time.